All right, Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Welcome to Common Solution. Uh, there's a common solution workshop. I almost said it wrong. Sorry. So I'm going to start off as usual with a story, and this is a really cool story. I heard this a long time ago, and another book study a long time ago. So there once was a king, and he took a boulder and he placed it in the middle of the main traffic roadway. This is like in ancient times, right? And then he hid in the bushes off to the side to see if anyone would remove this monster boulder out of the way. The wealthiest merchants walked by, they just walked around it. His closest followers, stared at it for a minute and just went on their way as well. Some stared at it and loudly blamed the king for not keeping the roadway clear, but none of them did anything to remove the stone out of the way. Then a peasant came along carrying a large load of vegetables, a huge load, like a wheelbarrow type thing. And he puts it down. He puts down his burden, we'll say, and he, tried to move the stone out of the roadway. And he pushes and he pushes, he can't move it. Finally, he just gathers the strength to do it. He succeeds. And after he picked up his large loads of vegetables, he starts moving forward and he notices that there's a purse laying that what was behind the stone. The purse contained many gold coins and a note from the king indicating that the gold was for the person who removed the boulder from the roadway. So the moral of what the peasant learned was that many of us understand every single obstacle represents an opportunity to change and improve our condition. So we need to remove those obstacles out of our way to change our condition. We need to take action removing our obstacles, and that's 4 through 9. Think of it this way. I mean, what does like a painter or an artist, we'll call it, why do they step back away from their painting? Some do the thumb on it and stuff, but they step back away from their painting. They do that to get a complete view and to see if any improvement needs to be made or something needs to be like stronger emphasis. And that's what we need to do here. We need to step back from our daily routine and look at the directions of our life and ask yourself one deep question: who am I? Who am I? And then the journey to know who I am begins with step 4. And step 4 is the beginning of we're gaining a new awareness, completely new awareness of things we never even thought of before. And with that new awareness, we start to let things go that we've had on. We call those old ideas, and that leads to a new way of life. So this is not about rearranging my old life in the hopes that I find a new one mixed in there. It's not about painting a new picture. We cannot have an old life without getting rid of the old one. I'm sorry, we can't have a new life without getting rid of the old one. We want God to be this thing where we just flick this switch and all is well. The only thing I know is to remove what's in my path is how I have God. So until you look in the mirror and examine your old beliefs and ideas, you will never know thyself. You will never know who I am, the I am aspect. And if I do not know what I am, then I do not know where I'm going. Think about that, or what I'm doing. So tonight marks the end of the 4th step, and hopefully those in our group either completed their 4th step or working on their 10th step or whatever, during this process, or maybe getting ready to do their 5th step. Next week, we will be covering 5, 6, and 7. And 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be doing, it's probably my favorite night in here because we get to hear some testimonials from people who've done 5, 6, and 7. And I love it because no other group I've ever attended has shared this stuff that we'll be sharing. Very intimate and personal. And I think it's what brings this group to a different level, closer in connection. So that we're discussing sex conduct inventory, an area with lots of ignorance and misunderstanding, I would say the least. And in society, it's very, sex is a very hush-hush thing. Some homes it's rarely discussed at all, and some children still believe the stork brings the babies. Our current educational system avoids sex education because people might be offended, leaving sex education to personal experiences. The church has laws and standards that we must live by, but does not teach us how to maintain those standards. They say just don't do it, at least until you're married, whatever. If someone has a sex problem, the only solution, they offer, you might find somewhere, even a self-help group, a sex, self-help group is total abstinence. There's nothing there but total abstinence. So if you have that problem, and even in recovery, it's hilarious. When people ask me, "Oh, where are you covered tonight, Steve?" In the book study, I'm covering sex conduct. I can make a joke out of it. Some guy today said, "Oh God," it's like, it's a big book. It's in the big book. Think about when you're at a big book discussion meeting, when everyone reads and talks about everything but the book, but big book discussion meeting, and it gets to step 6 and everyone's got something to say about 6, and then it skips over one page to sex, and all right, who wants to speak? And it goes on forever like that. Very awkward, very awkward. The thing is, sex conduct is never looked at and examined, so people have no idea the role it plays in their life, meaning they have no clue. It's an instinct, meaning they have no clue what drives them, what drives them. It might very well be the most powerful of the instincts. I think it's the most powerful misdirected instinct there is. One act of sex misconduct can change the lives of many different people from different angles, because then it leads to jealousy, suspicion, resentment, bitter, ugly feuds. We hurt others to get what we want. We'll over pursue it. We get involved with the wrong people. We get stuck with the wrong people. We have it at the wrong time. We have it at the wrong reasons. If we don't get what we want, like I said, we get resentful, we get angry. We retaliate, we blame and revenge. And the result is we're discontent. We're not satisfied with our sex life. It always can be better. It's always, it was great, but it could have been better. Let's go to page 80 in the 12 and 12. And we read this with Harms a few weeks back, but we're going to read it again because there's always different angles to see things. So it says, we might next ask ourselves what we mean when we say we have harmed other people. What kinds of harms we do to other people anyways? To define the word harm in a practical way, we might call it a result of instincts in collision, which cause physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual damage to people. Now, when we talk about harms, we talk about, you step on the toes of someone, they come back at you, and it's back and forth. Now let's just take a sex thing here, two people with instincts. If our tempers are constantly bad, we arouse anger in others. If we lie or cheat, on someone, right? We deprive others not only their worldly goods, but an emotional security, their emotional security and peace of mind. We really issue them an invitation to become contentious and vengeful. If our sex conduct is selfish, we may, I cross out may, we excite jealousy, misery, and a strong desire to retaliate. I've never known anyone in recovery or not recovery, very few people I've ever met in their relationships did not have some type of jealousy or misery in there. I know a few people have great marriages and stuff, but they have their issues. My wife and I don't have a perfect marriage, but there's no jealousy involved. It's just kind of, and I think it's because I don't feed it. I used to. That was one of my big character defects. Let's go to page 44 of the 12 and 12. And there's a little bit more about this. And I like this 12 and 12 because it kind of sets the pace where we're going. Page 44. Every time a person imposes their instincts unreasonably upon others, unhappiness follows. And the pursuit of wealth tramples upon people who happen to be in the way, then anger, jealousy, revenge is likely to be aroused. As sex runs riot, there is also a similar uproar. Demands made upon other people for too much attention, protection, and love can invite domination or revulsion in protectors themselves. Two emotions as quite as unhealthy as the demands evoked on them. When an individual's desire for prestige becomes uncontrollable, whether it's in the sewing circle or an international conference table, people suffer as a result. Suffer and often revolt. This collision of instincts can produce anything from a cold snub to a blazing revulsion. In these ways, we set in conflict not only ourselves, but with other people's instincts too. I like the way it set it up because it talked about instincts. So I've had people I've sponsored do amazing fourth and fifth steps. They'll turn around and they experience 6 and 7. They might have an experience in 6 and 7, right? They go out and make amends. They're kicking butt. They get into step 10. They start meditating, do step 11. And then they're sponsoring on that. The awakening's in full gear. But then they become aware more of what causes their resentments, what causes their fears. So they can kind of work on this stuff as they come about, because they're doing it in step 10, which means, of course, they're getting to truly know and understand how pride and self-esteem and personal relations work. They get to know the instincts and emotional security. They're living life finally, and then they get in a relationship, and there's nothing wrong with that. The sex instinct overpowers them, and I watch them become jealous, angry, controlling person, and they might go over some of that stuff with me, but after a period of time they won't, because it's happening so quick and so fast. They just are overwhelmed by it. They don't want to look at it as much. They spiral out of control and they go back out, because they still live by the same old ideas and behaviors with sex. And that's what I mean when I say it's a powerful instinct. You have to be thorough on it now on inventory when you do it the first time and over the course. But here's the reason why on this inventory, our 4th step, because we may not be inventorying sex conduct too often in step 10, especially if you're not in a relationship at all, or you're really growing spiritually. It's just, you're not going to inventory it that much. And if you're rigorously honest with this inventory, it will help you let go of the old ideas and behaviors. So you want to be as thorough now as possible. And so your spiritual growth is dependent upon that, because this inventory is about forming it's I'm going to say it later, I say it now. It's not about sex. It's about a sane, sound ideal for our future sex life and growing. Let me even rephrase that. It's about forming a sane, sound ideal for our life, right? Let's go to page 68. Page 68. So there's a lot of important information in these pages, and every time I study them, I see more how I can improve my behaviors for everything, with God's help, of course. But this inventory truly showed me that there's a spiritual solution to any problem. And I didn't, I never forget. I knew there was a resentment inventory. I knew there was a fear inventory. I assumed there was a harm inventory. I had no idea there was a sex conduct inventory. I was scared enough of doing fear, and then that popped up. It says, now about sex. Many of us need an overhauling there. Well, this is a powerful word, overhauling. So when we work on a car, there's a difference between a tune-up and an overhaul, right? And a tune-up is very simple preventative maintenance, right? I replace the spark plugs, I clean the engine a little bit, maybe put new filters on. I'm just going to ensure the car continues to run well and smooth, right? Without making weird noises and stuff. An overhaul is done at the major engine malfunction and failure, right? So what do? We take apart the engine, we lay all the parts on the ground, we dismantle it, and we look very carefully at each piece and hold it up and look at it piece by piece. Maybe we even do like a pressure test on some of the parts to see if it's leaking or not. We examine it very closely. Why do we do that? I mean, so we're trying to make the correct repairs and renovations to make adjustments so those parts, for the parts that work. And here's the most important part of overhaul. Most important parts: you get rid of the parts that no longer work, and you replace them with new, better parts, and the parts that work you keep. In other words, like you're repairing the car. We're doing the same thing here. We're not getting rid of the stuff in our sex life that that necessarily works for us. We're getting rid of the stuff that doesn't work and should never have been there to begin with, probably. So the more we're aware of it, oh, that's me. I do that. I'm always pointing, and like the thing about it is when you see someone that crazy and jealous, how many times we point out and go, man, that guy's nuts, and we do the same thing. So once it begins, it's a powerful instinct, very powerful instinct. So, above all, we try to be sensible in this question. So what does sensible mean? It's sound judgment and to make intelligent, practical decisions. So, you probably heard the old saying, if you're wearing sensible shoes, it means they're sturdy, comfortable, and your feet don't hurt. If you're a sensible person, it means you're level-headed, calm, and you make sane, rational decisions. So you want to be sensible. Sensible. It's not a word you hear all the time, but it's a very old school word, sensible. And it was a word you heard back in the day a lot. He's a sensible person. And it's just, we replace it with words like cool and stuff. But so it's easy to get off track. Here we find human opinions run extreme, absurd extremes, perhaps. So there's no difference then than it is now. On one set of voices cry out that sex is a lust of our own nature, a basis of necessity of procreation. We've heard that before. Then we have the voices that cry out for sex, sex, and more sex, and more sex, and more sex. We call that voice what? The committee. That committee can be insane. And my committee had a bunch of voices yelling out that didn't need to be yelling out, just the way it was. And, that's the crazy part. What do your voices say? When someone asked me that question, I wasn't very proud of it. Who bewail the institution of marriage. Bewail means to express unhappiness, disappointment. Why would anyone want to get married? Type of thing. Who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we don't have enough of it or isn't the right kind. We've been there. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow a man no favor for his flair. The other one would have us all on a straight pepper diet. So one thing you often hear in meetings is that the book says no relationship for 1 year. How many times have we heard that? Right? And you hear him say, oh, it's in the big book. Well, let's go to that page real quick. It's not. There's no page on it. It's one of those things that someone created. It's nowhere in there. It's complete BS. Let's see what the book really says. right where we're at. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. So it tells us something completely opposite we hear at meetings. That the sponsor is supposed to tell us, or people tell us you can't get relationship for 1 year, you got to go run to your sponsor to tell them who you're dating and all. No, we don't want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. So thank God, because as arbiters is like a neutral person who has the authority to settle a dispute, right? Control an outcome. I call it like a judge. And thank God we're not doing that. But you still see sponsors give relationship advice, who they should date, what they should say, when they should break up, get a divorce. That is not sponsoring, telling people who they can't date, or for 1 year, or you shouldn't go out date for 1 year. That's between them and God, right? You really want to be responsible in breaking someone up, or getting talking to them and getting a divorce, trying to run another person's life? One of my friends came to me once. His sponsor had fired him because he would not get a divorce. And I knew him and his wife, and they didn't have a bad marriage. I didn't see it. But even so, even if they did, that's not a message. That's a mess. That's some clogged up, sewage lines. I struggled. Look from my perspective, I struggled and failed at. If I look at my whole life, from when I first started dating, 15, 16, whatever it was, I failed at nearly every relationship I had in life. What do I really know about relationships? I turn my whole life over to God so I could learn to have relationships from Him, so he could teach me what a relationship is about. But I don't know anything about relationships, especially with another person. So I'm not going to tell you how to have one. And nowhere in our book tells us that, tells me to run my life anymore. So why would I run someone else's? Look what else says in here. We all have sex problems. That doesn't leave any of us out. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. Look at this question, and the big question. What can we do about them? We reviewed our conduct over the years past. Review means to look over carefully, study, like look in the mirror, like I said, examine under the microscope, so to speak, with the intention of establishing change, right? We get that through awareness. I always tell people, if you want to, if you want to see your thoughts, you put them on paper. It's kind of like I always tell people, like, can you see your nose? How do you see your nose? You can't. You can look a little bit, or you go look in a mirror. How do you see your thoughts? You put them on paper. When you see them on paper, it changes everything. Speaking of paper, let's take a look at this. So this is a sex conduct sheet. Same way, I want to point some things out first. So, like Joe and Charlie say sex conduct and other harms. But what I learned over the years, or pointed out to me by some very prestigious people, that of sex can be a resentment, can be a harm or fear. And what I found out was, when people were writing resentments, and they had these resentments towards their girls that really dealt around sex or near around it, it should be in the sex conduct. Same thing with harm, same thing with fear, right? So it's not just these harms and crazy things we did. So I put that over here: resentment, harm, fear, right? It's the same thing like we did before. Who was involved and what happened, right? Does it affect personal relations, high or low self-esteem, pride, emotional, material, sex relations, usually? Sometimes it's not sex relations, but ambitions, social security, sex, and selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened, inconsiderate. That's the new one. We'll get into those in a minute. So it says in the book, we reviewed our conduct over the years past. Where had we been selfish? Just tending mostly to my own needs, little or no concern of others, right? Where have we been dishonest? The act of lying. Did I ever lie to someone I was with? Stealing. Did I ever steal someone away or try to? Did I ever cheat on someone? Did I ever deceive someone within sex? And then there's the new one we have in here, inconsiderate. And that's lack of concern for others' feelings and needs. That's a big one with and why it's under sex. I don't understand when people want to put inconsiderate on all the other inventories. It's only on sex, right? It's only where it should be. So that would be column 4 we just looked at. Whom did I hurt? Column 1, right? Maybe, many believe that sex conduct is only for, like I said, for those we hurt with fear and all that stuff like that. I mentioned a second ago, maybe, they believe it's just harms. It's also fear and resentment. So I'm going to point out with these next parts of the book to prove it to you. Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy? So jealousy is it's a negative emotion, very negative emotion. I don't think there's there's a healthy jealousy. So when it's an emotion when we believe someone's trying to take what's ours, and it leads to thoughts of insecurity, anger, resentment, fear, inadequacy, high anxiety. So it's the root of insecurity, the root of it in many relationships. So this tells me there's fear and resentments involved from that right there. Do we unjustifiably arouse suspicion? What was suspicion? It's fear. That's believing that someone is guilty of a wrongdoing. It's I'm worried about it. I got suspicion. I got my suspicion. We say it's never my fault. It's fear involved in there. Probably resentment too. Do we unjustifiably arouse bitterness? What's another word for bitterness? Resentment. Deep-seated anger. And eventually, it's that feeling of miserableness, being miserable, and we eventually bleed the life out of the relationship through bitterness. I'm going to bleed this relationship until it's no longer, leaving an empty hole of bitterness, regret in my life. Guilt. Here's another deep question. Where were we at fault? Right? I'm going to find that and the effects and my mistakes. That's my story. And look at this one. What should we have done instead? Now we get to a spiritual question. This is not, I shouldn't have gotten together with her in the first place or him in the first place. You know that. It's more like just the opposite of what we did. I should have shown love. I should have been calm. It's that thought you have after you do something stupid or say something stupid. What should I have done instead? Make us more aware. Show me the way, God. And here's the condition. We got all this down on paper and looked at it. I'll do an example with sex without sounding awkward or anything like that. I'll just have a resentment I had against my best friend for stealing my girlfriend away when I was like 27 years old. And so I put him in here, Mr. X, stole my girl. Did it affect my personal relationships? Yeah, with him. Had high self-esteem, pride, emotional. First of all, it's a resentment, right? Pride, material, sex relations, and it affected all 3 ambitions because I wasn't going to see her anymore. Social security, sex. I'm going to look at more as a resentment. So I'm going to say it was selfish, frightened, and I'm going to say inconsiderate because I'm not going to say inconsiderate, selfish and frightened. Now I'll go over a harm I did to somebody. Very simple. I had a girl that I was drunk, and it was my friend's wife, and I hit on her, and it was ugly, and I was told about it. I vaguely remember it, and there was an attraction there, but she's with someone else, and I would never do that. I didn't never rarely. I mean, I don't think I wasn't into cheating on people and stuff like that. So it was a harm, you know. Who did I harm? Miss X, and then hit on her against her will. It wasn't like, I mean, she pushed everything away. It wasn't like I did anything super bad, but it still wasn't good. Did it affect my personal relationship with her? Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank God for Immense. She's a beautiful woman inside and out. She's a great woman. And low self-esteem. I was so embarrassed, and I still hold, and it still bothers me. Pride affected my pride because she was angry with me. She drank a lot and was an angry person, and she told a lot of people about it. And character assassination. There's another resentment there, and within resentments for her doing that. But I pretty much pulled it did it myself. Emotional security, sex relations, social security, sex. Because the reason I say sex is because I had in the back of my mind that maybe this girl would like me one day, and well, not anymore. So I was dishonest because even though I did something wrong, I never owned up to it. Was I self-seeking? Absolutely. Was I frightened? Absolutely. Was I inconsiderate? Oh my God. It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. I'll do a example of a fear was, I had a really bad fear that people would find out about past sex escapades, even though I didn't know who those people were that would find out, if that makes sense, like future people in my life. And so fear of, other people would find out about past sex things I did. Did it affect my personal relations? Not really with anybody, but it gave me low self-esteem, affected my pride, emotional security. I wouldn't say sex relations, but it did affect my social and security ambitions in sex, because I was so afraid I didn't want to get together with anybody, like as far as dating goes. And this is in recovery when I first got here. And I would say it was selfish and frightened. So that's, again, it's not that hard. So the thing is, a misconception of sex relations are always caused by sex relations. That's a big misconception. It has a lot to do with self-esteem and personal, as far as instincts goes. Everybody looks at this one or sex relations. So the biggest misconception is sex problems are always built around, or is built around sex relations. No, it's not. It's a lot to do with self-esteem and security. And people with low self-esteem are always in need of security, emotional, financial, and many use sex to build up their self-esteem. They think they need to go have lots of people, and of course, hurting some in the process. We have, this desire to have personal relationships, and some of us, do it to boost our pride. So the braggart and all that, as we did with our resentments and fear. And as far as the braggart goes, when you're going around your friends saying, hey, I got together with her, and when we did all this stuff. I've watched that, I've watched friends do that, even in recovery, and it always comes back on the girl. If you're doing that, if you're telling people that you hooked up with this girl, you're in the wrong place. So I'm going to show you guys a primer sheet, and this is the one. Oh, let me get that out of the way. Come back to single. So remember, we looked at this with harms. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. I'm going to show you how this is excellent. So when I fill this out for harms, I write down anyone I lied to. And this doesn't be every single person, but the people where someone really got hurt, everyone you cheated on, and that could be cheating someone on taxes, but it could also be cheating on a wife. That's what we're looking at here. Deceiving, misleading a person, stealing. They could be robbing someone, but could also be stealing a person away. And when you fill this all the way out, you go through and you circle the ones that have to deal with sex. The ones that are harms, you move over the harm inventory. The ones with sex, you move over to the sex inventory. It's just another fishing exercise, you know, it works very well, very well. And you'll be amazed. And I've had guys that I took it over as sponsors, and they're like knee deep in step 10, and or even a friend of mine and I'm not sponsoring, I gave him the sheet and he found a whole bunch of stuff to add to his, past inventory. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? You get more free, right? That's where I want to be. So here's the real reason we're doing this. We're back to page 69. Here's the reason why we're doing this. And this way we tried to shape a sane, sound ideal for our future sex life, future life out here, right? We're not, we're looking at future different without fear. We're trying to mold and be better for the future, right? Sex conduct is not about intercourse. This inventory, it's not. My prayer for this inventory when I got to it was very simple. God, can we skip this? Because I didn't want to do it. That was my prayer with it. It was scary. I had fear, the things I did, but it turns out it's not about sex. It's about 4 things. Here's the 4 things. It's about our conduct. And our conduct is a manner in which a person behaves and leads their life morally, spiritually, ethics, motives. It's also second, it's about motives, the reason behind taking action. Third, it's about our instincts. So 3 things right there: conduct, motives, and instincts. That's what this inventory is about, but it's about a 4th thing. And the main reason we're writing this inventory: shaping a sane, sound ideal for our future sex life. So all 4 things: our conduct, our motives, our instincts, and shaping a sane, sound ideal for our future sex life, our future life, like I said. But sane means well-balanced, rational, stable, healthy mind, sane. It also means the ability to see the truth. Sound means complete and whole, full of life, full of love, away from bad decisions, away from bad decisions. So when following our instincts, we're only focused on external things out here so that people would see a person that has it all together, that has it figured out. That's where pride comes in the way. My pride, makes me put on this nice suit and look good and talk a certain way. Yeah, and that's where the actor comes in. How many times were we an actor? The truth is that there is way more than this image we portray. It wasn't until, we sought God that we discovered we have a treasure chest full of possibilities called ideals. These ideals, I'm going to quote Edgar Cayce, are one of my favorites. Our ideals are always present. They're either consciously or unconsciously the basis for motivating our lives. Wow. So an ideal, what is it? It's not the word idea. That's a fixed state of the mind. Ideal. Again, it's an old school word that you hear it now a lot, but once in a while, but back then it was very strong, especially for the church and for metaphysics. But an ideal is a principle and value that is where within us. And when we actually pursue it, by its nature, it leads to growth. It's what you truly want to be in your life. What's in your heart? What do you want to be? Think of like your job. Maybe you're always, I want to be a veterinarian, but you're, the street cleaner, something like that. You're not truly where you're at, but they are, ideals are the measuring sticks for who we are able to become physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But they give us purpose in meaning, they add purpose and meaning to our life, but they tell us what to strive for, how to take action, right? So what do? They lead to higher consciousness always. Even if you don't know what higher consciousness is, because I don't stop pursuing the ideals. I always ask my sponsees, are you doing step 10, doing step 11? Are you still going out, you making amends, you're still going after your ideals? We all want to reach our goals. Who doesn't? We all want to experience our dreams. All of us have some type of job that we maybe have been waiting on it for a while, or we're looking for it. Something in our life is different. Something in our life is different. We're looking for it. And a very good friend of mine just got hired by a company that he's been trying to get on since 2018 and completely shifting in his career. And he's been doing it for like 3 weeks. He goes, oh my God, this is it. We all want to reach those goals and dreams. The main reason we do this is because we refused, for so long we refuse to begin living, and living the spiritual life brings us focus to your ideals so we can be fully human. So the truth is, a life without ideals is empty, and there's a lot of regret involved. I had a lot of regret when I got here. I wish I did that. I wish I did this. You don't want to be an old person saying that. Our ideals can be more than just thoughts. It can be reality. I don't care how old you are. And pursuing them turns them into reality. So why do I need a sane, sound ideal for my future sex? Why do I need a sane, truthful, whole, sound, healthy ideal for my future sex life? Because it was insane, untruthful, unsound, unhealthy. Period. I didn't have sex life. I had encounters with people who, if my head was on straight, I would never be involved, or if their hair was on straight, they'd never be involved with me. I didn't care about getting to know people at all. Not just with sex, but anybody. Look what it says next. It says, we subjected each relations to the test. Each relations to the test. Each would mean everyone. So now I'm going to take a test. Was it selfish or not? So I'm going to give you another primer sheet. And this is not inventory, it's a primer. All right. So this is just a relations questionnaire. It's not inventory. So we subject relation, was it selfish or not? Notice it does not say relationships. It says relations. Put each relations to the test. Sex relations. Each sex relations we look at. All relations. Relations are also affairs. A one-night stand, which my friend used to call failed relationships. Friends with benefits, or whatever you want to call it. All whatever relationships. List your sex relations. You list all the names. That you're how free you want to be, and ask for each one. Say I put Miss X on here. Was where I had been selfish? Was I selfish in this relation? Yes or no? Had I been dishonest? Yes or no? Someone's unmuted. Did I unjustifiably arouse suspicion? Yes or no? Did I unjustifiably arouse bitterness? Yes or no? Whom did I hurt? For me, it was like there was very few on here that didn't. Almost all of them went. I moved all of them over almost to my sex conduct, and this fished a lot of people out. And if you go back to the 12 and 12, we'll have more questions and more stuff to look at. Okay. So the 12 and 12 gives us a lot of good questions. And if you go to 12 and 12, page 50 at the bottom, I'll give you guys a minute to get there. When and how what instances did my selfish pursuit, my drive of the sex relation damage other people or me? That's answered in inventory in the third, fourth column. What people were really hurt and how badly? And here's the questions. Did I spoil a marriage? My marriage, or a marriage, right? And injure my children or someone else's children, right? Did my sex relations damage other people, such as my family, my children, maybe, others as well? It's a great question to answer. You go, oh, well, Jesus. Did I jeopardize my standing in the community? That's like a pride question. So as we answered in the inventory, just how did I react to these situations at the time? Whom did I hurt? Did I burn with guilt? That nothing could be extinguished. I think that, who did I hurt covers that, the second column. Or did I insist that I was the pursued and not the pursuer, and thus absolve myself? Sure. This question is best, it's best answered in the fourth column. We'll see that in the fourth column of the inventory. How did I, how have I reacted to frustrations to sexual matters? I think that's a question, that's answered all through the inventory. When denied, did I become vengeful and depressed? Another question, here's another question to help with resentment is, did I take it out on other people? That's more harm. Goes with the question earlier, whom do we hurt, hurting others? If there was rejection or coldness at home, did I use this as a reason for promiscuity? It's a deep question here. If there was rejection, did it make me go cheat? More questions as far as let's go to 52, middle of the page. These are some more deep questions from the 12 and 12. And it's just fishing ones. You write these out and you answer the questions and you put them over your inventory. Looking at both past and present, what sex situations have caused me anxiety, bitterness, frustration, depression. Write those out like the way to the other ones. The anxiety, oh yeah, oh, there's another one. Oh my God, So write these out as a question. Think of it this way. There's another way to look at these questions. Did it cause me fear, resentment, frustration, or depression? That's the way to look at it. List the names. Did it hurt? Did it hurt me? Did it, appraising its situation fairly. Can I see where I have been at fault? Column 3, instincts. Appraising a situation fairly, honestly. Can I see where I've been at fault? Hopefully you can, because if you can't, good luck. Do these perplexities beset me because of selfishness or unreasonable demands, or if my disturbance was seemingly caused by the behavior of others? Why do I lack the ability to accept the conditions I cannot change? Wow, sounds like serenity prayer. Let's go back to page 69. All right. Okay, this is the ideal prayer. This is called the ideal prayer. We ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. So you're like, God, help me mold these ideals so I can live up to them. Why do we ask God to help us mold our ideals? Because we have not gotten them on our own. We need, remember, which, it's what people forget in recovery after they start getting the wife back and the kids back and their job back. They forget that they failed at this. The reason I'm doing all this work because he failed before. I had a gentleman tell me this morning, I think I'm going to take a break from this stuff for a while. Forgetting why they arrived here. We remember always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly, selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. As I stated before, we're trying to come up with a future ideal. This is, very important, So let's see what that looks like. This is the last thing you fill in inventory. And this is very important, right? Why is this so important? So we can bring these ideals into our current relationship or future one with anybody, So this is very simple, This is the only relationship advice I get, is fill out one of these before considering a new romantic relationship, or, how to improve your old one. To write out a sane and sound ideal. So we can bring these ideals from darkness to light, period, or whatever you want to call it. We want to bring it into the future. So what we do here, ideals for me. So you see there's a 1 next to spirituality. There's a 2 next to mentally. There's a 3 next to emotionally. There's a 4th next to physically. 5 next to socially. 6 to security, and 7 next to sexually. So what you do here is you write a 1. I like to skip a line, 2, 3, 4. You put each one. So you don't have to write spiritually, but we get the gist, right? So you're describing yourself now. I'm going to give you an idea what I wrote. Now I mostly looked at towards ideals and period. Like what I'm looking for, what are my ideals in life, right? Spiritually, I wanted to be able to love all, something like that. 2, mentally, I wanted to be free of these resentments. Emotionally, I wanted to be able to think. I wanted to think on my own 2 feet. Emotionally, I wanted to be free of resentment and fear. Physically, I wanted to be healthy. Socially, I wanted to be able to connect everybody. 6, security. I wanted to be comfortable with money. I wanted to have money where I'm not getting greedy with it, but I have enough to live on. And sexually, I wanted someone that I could be close to. So when I wrote out my ideal partner, it was something similar. And it's crazy because what I wrote was, I want someone that just loves all, like I said, someone that is mentally can think on her own 2 feet, like I said, but similar but different. And then emotionally, I don't want someone that wears their emotions on their sleeve, right? That's for my ideal partner. I want someone that was comfortable with their beauty and not obsessed with it. I wanted someone I could take home to mom and dad. That never really worked well for me. My parents never liked the girls I was with. And the only reason they met the girls I was with because I was sneaking them out the back window or something. Security, I wanted someone I could be with where we could focus on building something together. And sexually, I wanted someone that make love to. And the funny thing is when I met my wife, I didn't walk around interviewing people with this. It was my heart being on paper. And 5 years of my recovery after writing this, met my wife, and I forgot all about this, but I wrote down, and I read it years later, and it was with her. It's very important to write this out. Very important. And it's kind of like, what would your ideal relationship look like? Maybe it's what you've always wanted, except you're not controlling it. God is. A sane, sound life is built on, like to have that life built on honesty and spiritual wholeness. So this is not about describing describing or finding the future Mr. or Mrs. Right. It's about forming morals to live up to. What you've always had within. By moving towards our ideals, we discover a standard for our future behavior with every person. Everyone has different opinions and standards about sex, meaning every ideal is different. And we're not trying to change your ideals here. And we are just want you to see your own. I'm not trying to, that Steve one sounds great, I'm going to put that down. And here's the thing is, more about ideals is their attributes is what they are, and behaviors we should like to bring into our relationship. And attributes are quality characteristics of a person. I heard an old timer once say ideals were like pies in the sky. You can fantasize about them, but you'll never reach them. And I was like, bullshit. Because you can reach them. Action's the key. And many people find it difficult to understand the meaning. You know what, I'm going to put this back up here because I want to explain something. Give me 1 second. I shouldn't have taken it down, my bad. So many people find it difficult to understand the meaning of the word ideal. You know, they think it's a goal, right? It's not a goal. It's our reason for pursuing our goals. So if I write on here, I want someone that, you know, is a kind and considerate. Well, what goals can I, what are my goals to reach that person or be there myself for my own ideals? I want to be kind and loving towards all for my mentally, let's say. So an ideal is not a goal, it's our reason for pursuing them. An ideal is a center point of our goals. Our goals provide the attainable measuring steps to achieve our ideal. So the goals of a person are the components of an ideal. The goal is what we want. The ideal is why. And the thing is, it's like, I want to these are the ideals, but what is my goal to have somebody or to be that person? I got to work for it, but the goal brings us to the ideal. So our goals that we set are towards an ideal. Let me give you an example. Let's say Dwayne has an idea to cure cancer, right? And his goal is to achieve this. He needs to become a doctor. To do that, he must get straight A's. Well, I'm saying back in high school in order to get to college scholarship. Then he must maintain great grades in college so he can get a scholarship. And then he must maintain great grades in college so he can go to med school, be accepted there. And his discipline, in the end, his disciplined dedication to academics makes him excel at top of his class, and as a result, he's a stronger person. You see, the goals he uses to achieve his ideals changes his life. I mean, there's so many of them. Mother Teresa wanted to, she wanted to feed the hungry, so she became a nun. Her ideal was to feed the hungry, and to achieve that, she became a nun. Bob Marley wanted to spread love to the world, so he became a musician. Stephen Jobs wanted a computer in every single person's home, so he created Apple computers. Our ideals become the axis of our life. In other words, our meaning revolves around these ideals. And it's a process that you work on as you're doing 10 and bringing it into 10. So achieving this ideal becomes a way of life. The goals transform us as we pursue them. So one thing I learned about, if you really want to know your overall ideals for anything, here's 3 great questions to ask yourself. Number 1, how do you spend your free time? Number 2, where do you spend your extra money? Number 3, what do you think about the most? And those answers, you'll discover your ideals. The different ones. And for me, when someone asked me those 3 questions, how do I spend my extra time? Years ago it was sponsees. Now it's my kids, and then sponsees are right behind it. But how do I spend my extra time? With my kids. Where do I spend my extra money? On my kids, right? What do I think about the most? My kids. So it's like, my ideals is to be this father. My goals to be that is I achieve that to be that father. And what helps me achieve that? The steps, right? So and the answers to these questions, you will that's where you discover that. It's very simple. It's kind of off the big book a little bit, but it's kind of cool. I thought I'd share that. Page 69. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, here's some conditions for an ideal. It's not just writing it down. All right, whatever ideal must be, we must be willing to grow towards it. That's the goal. The goal helps them grow towards it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided we do not bring about still more harm in doing so. See, they're saying we route these ideals. They're telling us to be this good person, to be emotionally balanced, or whatever you want to be. Keep doing the steps. In other words, we treat sex like we did any other problem. And how do we deal with every problem? Here's another prayer. And meditation, we pray to God that what we should do about each specific matter. God, what should I do about this matter? The right will come if you want it. Meditation with a condition, if we want it. God alone can judge our sex situation. Thank God. Counsels with others is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. Look at that word, let God. Let God be the final judge. Very important, especially when we look at next week. And we talked about last week with fear. We let God demonstrate through us. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. So, it's like I mentioned earlier, let God be the judge. The sponsor is not God. I love the fact that my sponsor says, when I went to him one time about, I don't know, do you think I should stay with this girl? He says, that's between you and God, man. And he just walked away. He got his car and left. He didn't want me anything to do with it, because that can cause a lot of issues there. Suppose we fall short. And one thing I've seen happen is these, new guy in recovery doesn't know any better, gets the sponsor, he does the steps with him, and the sponsor's like still making him calling every day, still, doing the 10-step stuff, but he's still, he makes the sponsor dependent upon him. And the sponsor does all these things and he follows Spencer's advice for breaking up and this and that. Well, here's what happens. Some type of ego thing happens in the sponsor and them. They have a falling out. And then they look back at all decisions they made because of that sponsor and they got more resentments than they imagined. That's why we don't have that type of relationship. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Here's the question. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? So if I fall short of these ideals, am I going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but it's only a half truth. It depends upon us and our motives. Look at this. If we are sorry for what we have done, have an honest desire to, here's that word again, let God take us to better things. Let God take us to better things. What better things? Love, peace, calmness, happiness, forgiveness, freedom. Do you have a desire to let God take you to those better things? We say it, but do we really mean it? When push comes to shove, do I really mean it? Let God. If we're sorry for down on desire, let God take us a better thing, we'll be forgiven and learned our lesson. If we are not sorry, this is a warning, and our conduct continues to harm others. This is very, very important here, because I watched this guy for years in AA walk into the room, and he looked like Indiana Jones, big guy, wore the big hat, and he walked in there and he wore the, the cowboy trench coat and everything, and he always had a different girl. I thought, man, this guy's the man. He is cool. And that was early in recovery. And he looked like he could played in the NFL or something. He just had the looks, he had it all, but he always had different girls. And I never forget, I still smoked at the time, and I went to a liquor store. There's about 2.5 years of sobriety, something like that. And I walk in there, and then this guy walking out, and I know that guy from somewhere. I can't put my finger on him, sitting in the car. I go, oh my God, it's him. And he looked terrible. I walked up to him. I said, man, I go, hey, what's up, man? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I'm, doing this. Had the bottle in his hand. And I just said, he goes, I've been sober for like a week and a half, but I can't manage it. And I go, once you come back, and he goes, I can't. He goes, I harmed too many people. I was just going from one girl to the next and didn't care who I hurt. He didn't learn his lesson. And he's dead today. That guy eventually died a few years later. He says, if we're not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we're quite sure to drink. Let's see how certain he is about that. Look what he says here. We're not theorizing. These are facts of our experience. If the thing is, if I'm not sorry and I'm not letting God guide me, I am living on instinct, just like that guy, rather than walking with God. You can't do both. Meaning I will keep harming people, resenting people, looking the other way when my heart tells me I'm doing something wrong. And eventually I'm going to drink to make that feel completely gone. That's what he's saying here. If we give our life to God, we get led to better things. If not, our steps can harm others. It's kind of like this: sorry or not sorry. Either you mean what you say in the third step prayer, or you don't. Period. Look what it says here. To song about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal. Another prayer. Pray for the right ideal for guys, each questionable situation, for sanity and for the strength to do the right thing. As sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This would take us out of ourselves. Acquired the imperious urge when the yield would mean heartache. Now you can kind of figure out what imperious urge means. Is that H word that has to deal with sex? But imperious urge is an overwhelming power, dominant, demanding, restless desire for sex. We know what that is. And yield means to give up, to surrender under pressure. Heartache is that like intense emotional pain and suffering we feel after losing a loved one, whether it's through death, divorce, breakup, or mistakes. That stuff we drink over. Do the solution and we'll fix that. So Bill just gave us 4 things to pray for now. Number 1, we pray for the right ideal so we can connect to that ideal. 2, we pray for guidance in each questionable situation, the same decisions. 3, we pray for sanity so we can see the truth and know where I'm at, know who I am. 4, we pray for strength and to do the right thing so we stay spiritual. The best definition of spiritual is just that, the strength and the direction to do the right thing. If you want to know what spiritual means, here, a great direction. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves harder in helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. That's a new way of thinking. Put others first. God first, others second, and my needs get met. If we've been through our personal inventory, we've written down a lot. What's a lot? Anyone know? Here's what a lot is: the best of your ability. It doesn't have to be a Bible, and thousands of pages. Maybe it will be 200, 300, or 15, or 5. We're going to keep doing inventory. More will be revealed. That's why I don't have guys writing for weeks on end. It makes no sense. I hear guys, oh, my sponsee's still working on his inventory. He's got 8 months. I've gave it to him 4 months ago. Well, what are you trying to get him to do? Look what it says. We listed and analyzed our resentments. We began to comprehend the futility and the fatality. Fatality means that the sense that no matter how much you work at it, nothing good comes out. Fatality means death, right? We have comfort. We have commenced. That means begin. We have begun to see their terrible destructiveness because of awareness. Remember, what I'm aware in life, I can control. What I'm not aware of can control me. I don't want to be controlled anymore. We begin to learn tolerance. So once I know instincts, I begin to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill towards all men, even my enemies, our enemies. We look at them as sick people. So there's that compassion again we talked about before. When you have compassion, you are aware of your emotional state that person's going to, because that's the same emotional state you used to be in. You know what that painful look like. When we start having the compassion, we begin to experience what Dr. Silkwood called the psychic change. Same thing as spiritual awakening. We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to set matters straight if we can. Step 9. Many refuse to make amends to exes. It's so sad. And if you do not, you will pay the price. In the spiritual program, you either get paid or you pay the price. Spiritually paid. You get paid. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us, we cannot do for ourselves. We hope you are now convinced. There's that word again, convinced, certain. We hope you are certain that God can remove whatever self-will is blocking from him. So being blocked from self-will in the end, that's the spiritual malady. Entering a life of continuous practice of 14.9 to stay spiritually fit is where we want to be, not spiritual malady. Fit spiritual condition, so I'm not spiritually sick, right? Living in the world of the spirit in step 11 with no more obsession, recovered from a simple state of mind and body. If you've already made a decision, step 3, an inventory of your grocery handicaps, step 4. Look at this, you made a good beginning. Shouldn't that be at the end of step 1? We made a good beginning? No, the beginning is when we're done with our 4th step. It's the last thing we do by ourselves. You're writing down your 4th step from the way you perceive it. Pretty deep. You do this and your life will never be the same. That's all I can say. That, being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of the truth about yourself. So step 4 is about finding out who we truly are and finding out what we are not. So we ask God for the strength to let it go. We need to find out what God wants us to be. In other words, step 4 opens the door to a new way of life, which is far more wonderful than anything we could ever imagined ourselves. One more thing from the 12 and 12, 53, page 53. But it is from our own twisted relations with family, friends, and society at large that many of us have suffered the most. We've been especially stupid and stubborn. I love that. We've been especially stupid and stubborn about them. The primary fact is we fail to recognize that our own total ability to form a true partnership with another human being. We failed at that. Step 4 is the beginning of a connection with others through awareness of instincts. And we see that our misdirected instinct is the root of those problems. Nearly every single emotional problem is a case of misdirected instincts. And once you get that connection with God, we get connection to others. We discover, I never had a relationship before. That's what I discovered with anyone, until I formed a relationship with God. God showed me how to do that. Kind of like somewhat like this. Step 4, I understood myself only after I destroyed myself. And only in that process of fixing myself, I discovered who I am. Here's a cool aspect to look at. So I have this can, right? So this can, it weighs maybe 1 pound, right? And I got this cool school that I bought at a garage sale. And this probably weighs about 7 pounds, right? Now the question is, which one's heavier? The 1 pound can or the 7 pound skull? It really doesn't matter how heavy the other one is. It's how long can I hold it up? Right? I can hold this one for 5 minutes. But if I hold this one up for 15, it's going to feel a lot heavier than the skull. See, my point is it doesn't matter how heavy it is. If I hold on to it like that long, a few seconds, if I hold on to it for like 10 minutes, it feels like 30 pounds. If I hold on to it all day, it feels like a ton. The same thing goes for our problems in our life. The longer we continue to hold on to them, the heavier they get. And we need to put them down and be free. And that's what we talk about next week, putting them down so we can be free. Let's do a meditation. This is when I want us to focus on what's going on inside us right now. What's going on inside you? Consider your purpose in life. Who are you? Or who am I? What am I? What am I doing with my life? Those questions. Who am I? What am I? What am I doing with my life? Where is my life going? Why am I here? And many of us struggle what we should be doing or where we're going. But we're all searching for something, even if we're not sure what it is. You know, do the images of the outer world accurately reflect my inner self? Is there a difference between who you really are and what you pose as being? You know, the ones that see, am I really inside the ones that represent what I want people to see Steve as? So stop seeking happiness in false values, money and self, and that's temporary. And leave your fears and failure, you know, leave those fears and worthlessness behind. So take a moment to pause and think. What drives you? What motivates you? What's most important to you? What do you want in life? What kind of person you want to be? What kind of person you want to be seen as? What's your inner calling? And then what's in the way of achieving those ideals? You know, think about what you can be. Now compare it to what you have chosen to become. In your heart, you know the truth. So the spiritual ideal, you know, let it be motivation that spearheads your attitude and actions in your home, in your job, in your community. Let it be the foundation of your life. Let it be the spirit through which you function. The highest principle you can possibly have. You know, if you are not the person you want to be, not the person you know you can be, take inventory, discuss it with another person, let it go, make amends, continuing uncovering new experiences. Let life unravel in a God way. Listen to the voice that is within you every day and ask the right questions. It's important to always study ourselves, help others, set goals, and strive for our ideals. By the grace of God, you will become the person you want to be. God, as I review my conduct over the years past, please help me see where my behavior has harmed others. Let me see where I was at fault and see what I should have done differently. Help me mold my ideals and help me live up to them and be willing to grow towards them. Those ideals. Give me the sanity and strength to always do the right thing. Amen.